Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second. It makes a massive difference in how the video performs. So the Miami Heat took a commanding 3-0 series lead on the Boston Celtics in Game 3, meaning the series is over because that's what that means historically. Maybe not if you're a Lakers fan or Bleacher Report, but in general, it means the series is over. So to talk about the game, there's not a lot to say, man. It was just a smackdown. Pretty much from the onset, you could tell where this game was going to go. There was a pretty strong feeling that Miami had command of this right out of the gate. They got to like a 10-point lead pretty early, and I don't think they let it dip below that at any point, really. It got to up to 20 midway through the third quarter, and while Boston did show some signs of life at times, at large, it looked very clear that Miami was going to win the game, and that's exactly what happened, to the point where the starters for both teams were sitting like midway through like the fourth or so. Yeah, not a great look for Boston, not the way that they wanted their season to go, to say the least. One thing that does stand out about this game that I do think is a little definitely worthy of mention, is a lot of people have been highlighting Jimmy Butler and his role in the Miami success, and that's entirely valid because even when he's not necessarily impacting the game directly, he's very clearly one of those guys who has an effect on the rest of his teammates. Like, I had some people comment that it was like dumb to say that Grant Williams was to blame for the loss in game 2, but I disagree entirely. First of all, Jimmy Butler had 9 points in the last half of that quarter, which I don't know if he necessarily does without being pissed off. He seemed very deliberately trying to go at Grant Williams all the time just to be petty, which is a human emotion that I appreciate a ton. Moreover, it affected the rest of his teammates. Jimmy Butler has an effect about him that just, when he's being like petty and mean and just going at the opponent's throat, it kind of translates to the rest of his team. Like, even Gabe Vincent pulled like the Michael Jordan 98 pullback on Jason Tatum late in that game for pretty much the sealing bucket of that one. He has an energy that spreads throughout to everybody else, and in this game the bench unit was particularly special. They had 55 points off of the bench. Duncan Robinson had probably his best game of the playoffs, and he even beat people off of the dribble in this game, which is just downright unacceptable. Honestly, I think the biggest fall off for Boston, as much focus has been paid to their offense because it's foundationally kind of garbage. Really, a lot of it was defense that was perplexing to me, because Boston being so-so on offense was nothing new, but the Boston Celtics team last year, that core of defenders and how they worked with the system from the Ime Udoka's system, defensively, it was one of the most impressive defensive teams I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's not exaggeration. It genuinely, like, I was like, is there a better core, like 5 defenders in the league than Marcus Smart, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Robert Williams, and Jaylen Brown? The fact that Jaylen Brown, and now it's probably Al Horford, but before that, Jaylen Brown was probably the worst defender of those 6. That says quite a bit about how good your defense is if Jaylen Brown is your 6th best defensive player. But the offense sucked, and the defense really didn't put up much resistance in any game in this series. So yeah, Boston screwed. And speaking of Jimmy Butler's pettiness, once I don't remember who it was, someone hit a big shot for Miami, but going down the floor, he did a like timeout celebration that was mocking something that Al Horford did, and I think it was game 1, maybe it was game 2, and I'm misremembering. It was pretty funny, and me personally, I know that being petty is technically wrong. Like, it's not a good thing to do, and it ultimately ends up usually hurting the person being petty more than it actually hurts the person they're being petty to. But damn it if I don't enjoy it. That's why I've been historically petty myself, which you can generally catch up on in my commentary whenever I'm right about something in the long run, such as Jason Tatum not being a superstar, because to me in this game, a superstar doesn't put up 14 points on 35% shooting, but hey, that's just me. Although not to put the entire blame on Jason Tatum, because frankly, this was a foundational issue with Boston, as well as a team-wide thing. Jaylen Brown has been horrible in this series. Worse than Jason Tatum by far. But of course, Jaylen Brown is not held to the same standard as Jason Tatum, as Jason Tatum is at least allegedly a superstar, which is fair. Although one narrative that I've always hated, even if I've been more down on Jason Tatum lately, is that Jaylen Brown is better than him. He is not. He just simply isn't, and this series is proving that further. Even as Jason has been bad for a lot of this series, he's also been good for decent chunks of it. Meanwhile, Jaylen has been bad for like all of it. So let's stop that, because we don't hold Jaylen Brown to the same standard we hold Jason Tatum to, because we all know Jason is a better player. So let's leave that in the dust here. But as for Boston in general, frankly, I don't know that conversation even matters anymore. Jaylen Brown and him being a Celtic next year is definitely up in the air. They have to pay him quite a bit of money, and there's been a lot of rumors circulating him, and he doesn't seem like he's particularly thrilled with the situation there. He's definitely made some comments to the media that are like low-key, like, yeah, I wouldn't mind not being here anymore. And frankly, I think that could be for the better of both sides, because I think the issue with Boston, and I'm going to elaborate on this further in a main channel video, but at least on the offensive end of things, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum just don't play off of each other at all. And I think if you have two star players, those players need to have skill sets that are compatible. Not just, yeah, we have two players who are really good. They are two players who are really good, but a way that you elevate that talent is by having them play off of each other, fill in for each other's weaknesses, connect in a way offensively that makes it really hard to guard them, because it's like, well, who do you stop here? But if it's just either of them taking turns isolating and the other one just standing there, it really doesn't make a damn difference. And that doesn't, it's not a symbiotic relationship, it's just them taking turns. And that's not the foundation of an offense that's generally successful. Something I've talked about plenty is that ISO offense is bad. It just is. There's really no ISO offense that's like primarily an isolation offense that I can think of throughout the history of basketball that has like been a championship team. Like at best, the best team I could think of for that would be the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers, because LeBron and Kyrie Irving did isolate quite a bit. But even then, their offense had a lot of dynamicism to it. It was not just as simple as Kyrie, you take it at the top of the key. Of course, that is how he hit that crazy shot. But, you know, it's not the only thing they got going for them. They would have Kevin Love post-ups and pick and pops, things like that. J.R. Smith moving off of screens. There was variety. But it seems like with Boston, especially when their offense is going sour, it's just Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum taking turns watching each other put up a bad shot. So yeah, I really do strongly believe that Boston would be better off if they traded Jaylen, and in return, whatever the trade may be, but ideally someone who can be a playmaker and someone who is also a star potential level talent, who has a skill set that is compatible and symbiotic with Jason Tatum. I think a big issue as well that exists with Boston is that they don't have a great playmaker. Jason Tatum is very often led to be this lead ball handler because the idea of a modern lead ball handler forward is very popular, but frankly, he should be playing off ball a lot more than he is, and having somebody else be the primary initiator. Now, a big rumor that's been going around that I'm pretty in favor of, if you could do Jaylen Brown for the third pick and Anthony Simons, I would do that for sure. I think you get Anthony, who already is probably at least a similar-ish tier as a playmaker to Jason Tatum. Excellent three-point shooter, score in general. Obviously, you're going to take a little bit of a hit defensively, but I mean, your defense wasn't that great to begin with this year, even though it should have been. So I think that's more of a systemic thing rather than a personnel thing. And then if you get Scoot Henderson with that third overall pick, I think I'm good with that move if Scoot Henderson's available. If it's Brandon Miller, it's not necessarily a knock on Brandon Miller, but it's more about Scoot Henderson being a guard and a playmaker primarily. I don't know a shitload about these draft prospects, but the vague idea is definitely there of Scoot being this playmaking guy. And, you know, let's say Scoot is a star player, and by his third season, you know, Jason Tatum is 27, 28, entering his prime. Scoot Henderson starting his star trajectory. That duo probably is going to be a championship level duo. And I understand the argument of like Jaylen and Jason have made multiple conference finals together, but I don't know, man, they just keep falling short. So like at a certain point, if you're consistently getting to the finish line and not crossing the finish line, I can't keep giving you credit for getting close to the finish line. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're both still young enough that I would get running it back. I 100% would, but I also feel like they're just delaying the inevitable by running it back. There's probably some way to get some great playmaker out there without moving Jalen, but if that's the necessary step to shake up what Boston is doing, I would do it personally. But again, I will have more elaborate thoughts on this in the main channel video. I kind of went deeper into it than I wanted to, but you know, whatever. That's what I wanted to talk about, so that's what I talked about. But that is it. Goodbye.